Hey Skyfarers, Arkanaut Company here, bringing you a quick video about something that's a bit of a hot topic at the moment, the new Kharadron Overlords Battleforce Box. I've seen quite a few people on Facebook asking, should I get this box? Should I buy this box and start collecting set? And it seems to be mostly new players that, they've seen a new box come out and like, well, is it a bargain? Is it actually worthwhile? Because sometimes these boxes aren't. I've answered a few people on Facebook, but I thought I've got a YouTube channel. I might as well do a video about it. So yeah, I'm going to take you through what's in the Battleforce box, some of the other options available rather than that, like start collecting and that sort of thing, and some sort of shopping lists that you can buy to get into Kharadron Overlords without spending a fortune. But it's Warhammer, so you will still spend a fortune, I'm afraid. Yeah, so I'm mostly going to do this from the perspective of new players. If you're already playing Kharadron Overlords and you've got half an army or whatever, then you probably know what's in the set. You know what's good. You know what you've got, so you know whether this is going to be a good expansion for you. You don't need me to tell you whether to expand your army or not, because it depends what you've already got, and that sort of thing. Because you might have 5 gun haulers already or something. So yeah, and the other thing is, I'm not going to do this from the perspective if you're building towards a specific list, because if you're building towards a specific list, then literally you will just buy the list. It's not that hard. Work out the cheapest way to do it. So this is more for people that don't really know what kind of list they want to play. So yeah, I think that's covered the sort of intro. Let's have a look at what you get in the box. So first of all, you get Brock Granson. Here he is. I'll be honest, he's a bit rubbish. I mean, that's just the way it is. He's got cool mustache guns, and he's a great looking model. But from a playing perspective, there's probably one competitive list that you can put him in. And when I say competitive, that's like on the lower tier of competitive. If you really want to try and force Baraknar to be competitive, then yeah, there's maybe one list. And if you want to know more about the list, we did a video on Baraknar recently, so go check it out. But what you could do if you buy this set is you could convert him to Endrin Master with dirigible suit. The simplest way to do that is probably with a quick head swap. Personally, I would want to do something a bit more than that, because I think it's quite a distinctive looking model. So you might want to consider maybe trying to remove these orbs or changing his gun here to make him look a little bit different from Brock Granson if you are going to convert him. And then the other thing is, the most important thing is, Brock Granson and the Endrin Master of Dirigible Suit are on different size bases. Brock Granson's on a 50mm, Endrin Master of Dirigible Suit is on a 40mm. So you have to get that base, obviously, and make sure it's on the right base for playing. Looking at what else you get in the box, you get 2 units of Sky Riggers, which are these guys. Sky Riggers, if you don't know, that's a dual kit. So you can use them to build either Endrin Riggers, which are the ones on the right here, or Sky Wardens, which are the ones on the left and have the Sky Mines. They're really good. You'll always want some of them in your list, I think. I've got lists where I've got 18 of them in. I've seen people recently looking at lists with 2 units of 12. And so you're getting 6 in here, which is pretty good. And the other thing is, because all the different build options, they've got long range guns, they've got melee weapons, and both Sky Wardens and Endrin Riggers can both do the long range or the melee. There's lots of different build options. There's lots of different ways that, if you were going to magnetize them, it would be a bit of a pain. So having a lot of them is always going to be good. Basically, you can't have too many. I mean, I think I've got like 30, and that would probably be counting some that are on sprue still. But you know, if you build them all as engine riggers, then there's lists out there as well for like barracks on that have 12 Sky Wardens, and then yeah, you can do a little bit of magnetizing, but not too much. So they're really good to have lots of. You get 2 gun haulers, which is the smallest ship in Kharadron Overlords. It's a good ship. It's 130 points, so it's a bargain to put into a list basically, and it can teleport. 130 point unit that can teleport is really good. And you could write lists that don't have it, but you'll also sometimes write lists that have got 3 or 4, maybe. I don't know. 2 would be more common. There are some people that, you know, if they really love them, there's people looking at lists of like 12 of these guys in, which that, to be honest, is getting more towards, you know, a meme list, but you're going to want a couple. So getting 2 in this box is really good. The average player won't want more than 3, I would imagine, 3 or 4 at most. But, you know, if you really love them, they are good enough that you could build a very competitive list around having lots. And then last but not least, you get the frigate, which you can't see because I just drew all over it. The frigate, honestly, it's okay. Yeah, that's the best way to describe it. It's okay because it's not really great, but the trouble is it sits in this awkward position between the gun hauler and the ironclad, which is the bigger ship. So if you want a cheap ship, you go for the gun hauler. If you want a really big ship with the troop transport and the shooting power, then you go for the ironclad. It also has some problems where when you put it in a list, it doesn't have very good engine works available to it compared to, say, the ironclad. And the troop capacity is the main problem because if it carries any more than 10, then it can't fly high or it gets half movement. So what that basically means is if you put a unit of Arkanauts in it, then you can't put a hero in with it as well. So, and then the same with if you want to put a unit of 10 Thunderers in as well, then you can't put a hero in as well without losing fly high or halving the movement. If you want to know more about how the troop transport works, and I did a video about that recently, so go check it out after this. But in the meantime, just sort of know that generally the ironclad I prefer, and I put that in lists a lot more than the frigate. I'm not saying that you will make lists with frigates in, but the ironclad's more popular basically. But overall, the set is going to be £125 as far as I know from a price leak, because they haven't. I don't think Games Workshop have announced it officially. It's going to be £125. All those models combined is £190. So that's basically 34% off, and their Games Workshop prices, you know, their RRP. So if you go and get them from your local store that does 10% off or 20% off, you know, online retailer that does 20% off, then, you know, it's 20% off that price or 10% off that price. But the discount compared to if you buy it, the sets individually is the same basically. So I'm going to do everything based on Games Workshop prices because that's just easier for everyone. Won't confuse people, I think. 34% off is a bargain really. By the time you add on your 20% discount, if you get it elsewhere, then you're almost sort of half price compared to Games Workshop prices. If you consider Brock Grunson a bit of a tax, and you don't want to convert him, then it works out about 24% off, which is not so bad. If you just try and imagine he's not in the box, how much it would cost, then yeah, it's about 24% off then. But like I said, you can convert him. So overall, I think if you bought this box, you won't be disappointed. Like if you've got no other KO and you buy this box, you're not going to be disappointed. It's a bargain, and you can expand from here. But you might not want to buy 2 of this box or 3 of this box because it's lacking in foot troops and hero options, which is always a problem when you buy these boxes, that there's normally only one hero, and then you want other heroes and that sort of thing. So let's have a look at some of the other options that are available to you. The most obvious choice, the Start Collecting set. In there you get an Endrin Master on foot. He's a decent hero. He's not something I think, oh yeah, I really want an Endrin Master in this list, but he's handy for healing your ships. Quite often I'll put him in if I don't have enough points for an Endrin Master with Dirigible Suit. You get a Gun Hauler, which I've already talked about, and you get some Skyriggers that I already talked about in the other box, and you get some Grundstock Thunderers. And Grundstock Thunderers are a really strong unit. They've got some pros and cons. There's something that you're probably not going to put in every list, but you're definitely going to want to have some. And if you don't buy some Thunderers when you buy your initial sort of purchase for getting into Kharadron Overlords, then eventually you will want to get some. So yeah, this box is £60 from Games Workshop. It's gone up a little bit because when they first brought it out, it's 50, but £60 at the moment, and it's £102.50 worth of models, so it's 41% off. So it's actually better value compared to the Battleforce box in that sense, on pure maths. And if you're considering like the hero as attacks, so like if you'd already bought one Start Collecting box and you're getting a second one, you think, oh, I don't really want a second Endrin Master, then it works out 29% off. Having said that, having two Endrin Masters, it's not that bad, you know. You will occasionally write a list that's got two in, because they do. I mean, look, that's a big hammer, and if he hits with it, he hits pretty hard. So you can do a pretty fun thing where you put a couple of him in a ship, then you charge the ship in, and then they go to town with the hammers, basically. Yeah, but he's not necessarily like, oh, I really want to put this hero in for X reason, because a lot of the other heroes have got better artifact choices, so you gravitate towards choosing them for the artifacts. For the Endrin Master doesn't have those wow factor ones, but he heals the ships, which is really good. Moving on is the Aetherwar set. Now this set is a limited edition, and you might not be able to find it everywhere at the moment. Games Workshop aren't selling it themselves anymore. They're completely sold out, but there are still retailers online that are selling it, so that's why I'm including it. And you can probably get it on eBay or find people selling halves of it, because it's a dual set. So what you get in it is you get Gun Hauler, 2 units of Skyriggers, and this guy, the new Endrin Master with Dirigible Suit that come out with the new book. He's really good because he makes your Skyriggers battle line. Yeah, and he's really good, and he's got some cool stuff that you can do. He's got great artifacts. You can get like phosphorite bomblets, which can potentially do a lot more wounds. And honestly, the main reason you'll probably put him in a list a lot of the time is just to make Skyriggers battle line, and he's got some decent stats. But unfortunately, you get all this rubbish Zinchi crap. So you might not want that. In fact, you probably won't want that. But if you can find a mate to split this with, then this set is an absolute bargain. Like, get Basil the bargain hand over here, because you know, this is it. Unfortunately, yeah, you do need to find someone to share it with, or you'll have to buy it and then try and sell the Zinch stuff on eBay or whatever, or have a look on eBay and see if there's people selling the KO half, because it's £110, but if you shared it, then that's £55, and you get £108.50 worth of models, which means it's almost half price, 49% off. I'm not sure if I would recommend buying 2 of them, but if you did and you considered the extra Endrin Master as a tax, then it would still be 35% off, which means it's still a really good bargain, even if you didn't use the second Endrin Master. And as I said, you always want lots of Skyriggers. Like, you're always going to want loads of them. So let's move on to something else that's relatively new. And this is the Kharadron Overlords Warcry Warband. It's basically just a unit of Thunderers and a unit of Skyriggers for £40 instead of £55. So 27% off, which is a good deal. And of course, obviously, then if you buy it somewhere where they're 20% off, 10% off, it's obviously even cheaper. And then you get your other cards. And if you want to play Warcry, then you can. I don't personally. But as I said, you're going to want Thunderers at some point. You're going to want lots of Skyriggers. So this is a really good set, I think, for expanding. If you've already bought the Battleforce box, or if you've already bought a start collecting or 2 start collecting sets, then that's when you start looking at this set, because, like I said, there's only so many gun haulers you want. So once you get up to, say, 3 gun haulers, or you don't really want more, unless you really love them, in which case just go and buy them, because, buy the stuff you love. But if you're looking at it from a competitive point of view and like a balanced list sort of point of view, then you're at some point you'll be like, I don't really want to get a start collecting set again, because I'm going to get another Endrin Master. I don't want a 3rd Endrin Master. I don't want potentially a 4th or a 5th gun hauler. And I want some Thunderers and I want some Skyriggers. So then this is really great. It's basically a perfect add-on sort of thing. And then the last thing I want to show you before we look at some sort of shopping list is Fundrick's Profiteers, because I can't stress this enough. This is like the must-buy for Kharadron Overlords, in my opinion. Like, I don't see why you wouldn't buy it, because unless you don't want a chemist, but you will want to use a chemist at some point in a list. Most of the heroes have got a place in a list, in a list or of some sort. But basically, Fundrick's Profiteers is meant to be for Shadespire or Underworlds, whatever you want to call it. But Fundrick, this is Fundrick here. You can just play him as a chemist, and this box costs £15, and a normal chemist costs £17.50. So why would you pay £2.50 extra to get the normal chemist and then not get these other models free? Like, you get some free stuff. That's great. And it's not just about having extra stuff. I'm not just being greedy. Like, you get a cool alternate pose here, like for your Arkanauts. This Thunderer with a rifle is actually really handy, because then when you build your Thunderers, you can build a guy with a fumigator or one of the other special weapons without having to think, if I build it like this, then I can't run all rifles. Like, if you got him, then that gives you the option, especially because the fumigator is I did a video a while back about how to magnetize Thunderers, and I didn't actually show how to do the fumigator in it, because it's just a pain in the ass, basically. Like, you can do it, and I have magnetized fumigators, but they are a lot more difficult than the other models in the set. So having a guy that has a rifle, like an extra guy that you can just put into a unit, means that you can build one of your Thunderers with a fumigator and not have to worry about magnetizing it. And then the same goes for this Sky Warden in the middle. If you've got a unit of Endrin Riggers that you're building with the long range guns, then 1 in 3 has to have the melee weapon. So if you build him as an Endrin Rigger, then by having this set, you also then have the option of running that unit as 3 Sky Wardens. You won't technically have the Sky Mines, but I think in most cases you can get away with that. And if you want to, you can magnetize it as well. So, because they will snap off, honestly. The Sky Mines snap off all the time. So, like, you might as well magnetize them, because you're going to end up doing that or trying to glue them back on at some point. So let's have a look at how you can sort of piece all this stuff together into a shopping list. And I've got 2 shopping lists here that, to me, are like the cheap way to get into Kharadron Overlords. And obviously, as I said before, like, if you've got a set list that you've seen and you want to play that, then build that. The reason I sort of put these selections together is because it uses the box sets that are available that are cheap, and B, it has a little bit of everything. So you have some Thunderers, you have some Sky Riggers, and then you can then play some games with them and decide which ones you like and which ones you want to play with more, as opposed to just going all in on Sky Riggers and then not having any experience with Thunderers, or vice versa. You've got a little bit of everything, and so I'm not going to read everything out that's on here, but basically one uses the Aetherwar set, which is priced up on here as the assumption that you can split it with someone, or you can buy just the KO half. And then the other version uses the Battleforce Box. And you'll see here that I've got the points totals at the bottom. You might think, well, 1850 points, what use is that if I want to play a 2,000 point list? But actually, by the time you add in a battalion or an endless spell, then there's a list here basically. So you can, with the models available on both these shopping lists, because they're both almost the same, you can build either an Iron Sky Command, or you can build an Escort Wing battalion and have, I can't remember exactly how many drops it is. It'll be like 4 drops ish, I think. But you'll be relatively low drop army. You will have a few different units that can do different things, and you've got the ships to move the units around, and so it's a decent, solid, balanced collection of stuff that by the time you add in a battalion or something, you've got a 2,000 point army. And actually, with this left one, the way it works out is you're actually at like 1960 points by the time you add on, say, like Iron Sky Command or something, which means you can potentially get an extra Triumph, which for KO is really, really good. This one on the right is basically the same as the one on the left, but because it's a Battleforce Box, you, instead of an Aetherwar, you basically get an extra gun hauler. I can't remember what the other difference was. An extra gun hauler. And a frigate, obviously. So you get an extra gun hauler and a frigate, which gives you a little bit more choice on if you want to play an escort wing. You've got a few more points. The other thing is, it's my points total at the bottom here is based on if it's Brock Grunson, but to be honest, I think you would want to convert him into an Endrin Master. And if you don't convert him into an Endrin Master, then bear in mind, then you've got £23.50 or 20% off that if you buy it elsewhere to add on to this total. And then with this left-hand list, obviously it's missing the extra gun hauler, which to be honest, I don't think you necessarily need. But if you wanted to have a frigate for a bit more flexibility with escort wing, and of course you could just go and buy a frigate separately, and that would bring the total up to 340, which makes it a bit more comparable to this to the Battleforce Box version. It's still cheaper actually, but basically what you get with the Battleforce Box is you get an extra gun hauler for £20, so a third off basically. So you get a good deal on your third gun hauler. So yeah, I think these are two great ways to start Kharadron Overlords. They're not necessarily the most competitive builds, but they will give you a good solid foundation. You'll get to try out all the units and go from there. And from there, you can sort of work out more competitive lists and lists that will suit your play style. If you want to build something or go more substantial, that's what my next slide is for. If you want to, because this is basically like just scraping 2,000 points. But if you want to go a bit more substantial and have a bit more flexibility, a bit more choice in your lists, then I've got 3 sort of different ways you can build them here. So the one on the left is based on using Aetherwar. Again, that's priced up at only based on the Kharadron Overlords model. So if you can split it, I've added in 3 units of Arkanaut Company because they're your generic battle line. So by adding those on top of what we had on the previous slide, you get a lot more flexibility on the skyports you can choose and your general choice, because you're not tied in either to try and go in Urbaz to get your gun haulers battle line or to using the Endremaster dirigible suit to make your Skyriggers battle line. And one thing I should have said on the previous slide is I sort of based both of those on the assumption that you'll build your Skyriggers as Endremiggers. And again, I've added in a frigate as well onto that, so you've got that extra choice and a second start collecting set, because then basically with all of this combined on this left-hand version, you will have 18 Skyriggers and you will have 20 Fundrers, which means you've then basically got the choice of, if you want to, you can do what's known as the Frown car, or it's like the new version of the Clown car, which you might have heard of, which is basically the Iron Sky Command with, and it's like a 1-drop army or a 2-drop army, maybe 3, depending on how you flesh things out of it. But it's basically not many Arkanauts and loads of Skyriggers. So there's lots of, like, you basically have 3 units of 6 Endremiggers, an Ironclad, 3 heroes, and lots of Endremiggers. Or you can do a different version of a list where you have basically an Ironclad that has 20 Thunderers in it, that you just move the 20 Thunderers around, and 20 Thunderers will do a lot of damage, basically. But that's more of a Death Star assault. So you've got the choice between those 2 different styles, and then having the 30 Arkanauts means that you can do things where you can take a Chemist as your general in Zilfin and have the Collector command trait, so you can unlock extra artifacts and that sort of thing. So it gives you a fair bit of flexibility by having the Thunderers and the Endremiggers and the Arkanauts. And then if we move on to the middle list and the right hand shopping list, they're basically the same collection of models, but using the Battleforce box in 2 different variations. So this middle one is the same price as the one on the left, so £495. That's again Games Workshop prices, so you can probably get 20% off. Slightly less points because it's only 1 start collecting set rather than 2 for getting in your Thunderers and your Skyriggers. So you basically don't have the extra Endremaster on foot. So if you get that option, and then the option on the right, it's with 2 start collecting instead of 3 Warcry bands, so you do get the extra hero. And that's why they sort of end up being different bands. But it's a bit more money, but you get more stuff basically. Because if you really, the difference between these 2 on the right is the numbers of start collecting and Warcry band. Because if you go, the difference between a Warcry band and a start collecting set is for an extra £20, you get a gun hauler and a foot hero. And if you want the gun hauler, then that's great. And if you want the foot hero, then £40 plus £17.50 for a foot hero is £57.50, which is £60 for the start collecting set. So if you want that foot hero and the Sky Wardens and the Thunderers, then why would you not buy the start collecting set? Because you get the gun hauler for £2.50, which is an absolute bargain. So yeah, I mean, these prices, I mean, you're looking at £500 there to start an army. If you get 20% off, then obviously that's less. Well, it'd be £400 roughly. So, but that is quite often how much a Warhammer army costs if you want to buy a full army and have the flexibility. But as I said before, I showed you the cheap way of doing it, and then all of these are based on the cheap version plus some extra stuff. So you can work towards these. You haven't got to buy all this in one go. You can you can buy this stuff I showed you before, and then add on the Arkanauts, add on the extra Warcry set or the extra start collecting. To see Max is in the chat. He's saying buy all the KO. Don't buy all the KO because I need some left for me and everyone else. But yeah, so it looks like a lot of stuff, but it does give you a lot of flexibility. And then, so lastly, what I want to talk about is some add-ons and some ways to expand your Kharadron Overlords force. So we'll go with the add-ons first. Skaven Endless Spells. Surely by now you've probably heard about the Warp Lightning Vortex. If you're completely new to Warhammer, you don't know what that is, then basically it's a really, really, really strong endless spell. I put this on add-ons rather than in the the essentials sort of things slides I was looking at before, because we are really close to the December FAQ now. So either that's potentially maybe getting a points increase, or who knows, maybe there'll be a nerf to the way endless spells work for Kharadron Overlords. But at the moment, the Warp Lightning Vortex is the spell to take in the Spell in the Bottle artifact for the Chemist. So yeah, you're going to want to get that spell. Maybe wait a couple of weeks just until the FAQ comes out, so you know what's happening with it. But it's also an add-on because you don't necessarily have to go and buy the Skaven Endless Spells. You can do some sort of cool steampunk conversion to make like a Kharadron Overlords Warp Lightning Vortex, or maybe you've got a mate that plays Skaven, so you can borrow his, or maybe you can get it off eBay or something. I've managed to borrow one for all of my games so far, so it's you don't necessarily have to go one. The second one I've got there is the Slave to Darkness Endless Spells. They're also really good. I mean, there's a lot. Basically, the Chemist at the moment can take all the different endless spells in the game. So obviously, you can only take one. So what's good about the Slaves of Darkness one is there's two in that box that are good, because you get, for all the faction ones, you get three spells in the box. And the Slaves of Darkness ones, you've got the choice between the Darkfire Demon Rift, which is really good against wizards. It's really good against Lumineth Realm Lords, because a lot of that stuff is wizards. There's a lot of, not my top pick for putting in a list at the moment, because the Warp Lightning Vortex is just better, because the Darkfire Demon Rift is good against some armies, and when it is good, it's amazing against those armies. But then you'll have your next game against another army, and it won't be good. So I think it's better just go with the Warp Lightning Vortex. And then the other thing in the Slave to Darkness and the spells is the Realm Scourge Rupture, which is also useful in the spell. It can half the movement of enemy units and do damage to them. So you've got two different endless spells in there that are really good. And lastly, Malign Sorcery, which if you already play Warhammer, you probably already got. If not, you might have a mate that's got it, and so you might be able to borrow those models off them. But there's a few good spells in there that might be handy for spending the bottom. You've got things like Geminids and Chronomantic Cogs, which you might think, oh, that's a bit strange for KO, but there are some good choices for that. So yeah, there's some good spells in there, but unfortunately, you're probably only going to want to use one or two. So you also might want to consider conversions, or see if you can get the spell on the actual spell you want on eBay, something like that. Something like Chronomantic Cogs, you can just buy some plastic or MDF cogs and glue them together and do some stuff with a glue gun and put them on a base, can't you? And it will look like some cogs. So let's move on to expanding. And the forces I showed you in the list before, in the slide before this one, that was already a lot of stuff. But the trouble is with Kharadron Overlords is the internal balance of the book is really good at the moment. Basically, you can pretty much pick the models you like the look of, shove them in a list, and you can make them work. And it will be a fairly competitive list, because the strongest stuff about Kharadron Overlords is fly high, and the fact that everything shoots. And there's lots of other good stuff as well, like Spell in the Bottle. But by combining teleporting and shooting, you can pretty much make anything work. So the stuff that I got here for expanding is because there are loads of options for competitive lists for Kharadron Overlords. So I've got an extra frigate because then that will give you an option for if you want to do the Iron Sky Attack Squadron Battalion, which is basically the only other battalion that Kharadron Overlords have access to. So at some point you'll want to probably try that battalion out. So you need at least 2 frigates for the battalion. So that's why I've got that as something you might want to consider for expanding. And you know what? If you like the sound of that battalion, if you've already bought the Kharadron Overlords book, which I realised I probably should have put that on the essentials list somewhere, was the Battle Tome. Obviously, you do need to buy the Battle Tome. Probably didn't need me to tell you that, but the Battle Tome obviously you will want. But if you love the sound of that battalion, then by all means you can build around it, and you know, rather than doing the shopping list I showed you before, then consider something like 2 Battleforce boxes, because then you get 2 frigates. It's really handy. And then next thing on the expansion list, I've got 4 units of Sky Riggers. So I just got distracted things of reading the chat. Doesn't made it. Sorry, Flo. I don't know what that means. Doesn't made it easier for me. I don't know if you mean this whole video. Hopefully that's not the case. But yeah, 4 units of Sky Riggers to expand is because, as I said before, you're always going to want lots of Sky Riggers because there's a lot of different ways to build them. And there's this really cool thing you can do in Barracks On where you can take 12 of them and do like a KO melee list where you just sort of alpha strike with all the Sky ones with the pikes. But that's not that great in other Sky ports. So it's not something I recommend for starting KO with, like building Sky Wardens. But the trouble is, if you buy a load of Sky Riggers and you build them as engine riggers, then if at some point you want to try that really fun Barracks On list where you go for the full melee option, then you're going to need more Sky Riggers. So you're going to want some Sky Wardens to do that. Next thing I got on this list for expansions is 2 units of 10 Arkanauts, because if you play Barrack Monar, then it kind of forces, well, it doesn't force you, but you end up going down this route where you take lots of Arkanauts because they make one of the allegiance abilities for Barrack Monar is get to run and shoot in the first battle round, and the unit that makes the most of that is Arkanauts, because you make your opponent go first, they move towards you, and then they underestimate your threat range, and then you run your units of Arkanauts towards them and shoot them. And you end up playing a very different style of Kharadron Overlords, and there's this style of play that you can do where you just have lots of bodies on the board. And when I say lots of bodies, compared to like something like Beast of Chaos or Skaven or whatever, it's not. But for Kharadron Overlords, having 50 Arkanauts on the board is a lot of models, because a lot of Kharadron Overlords lists you'll look at will have like 1 unit of 10 Arkanauts and 18 engine riggers and some ships, whereas having 50 Arkanauts on the table is completely different. So it's not something you'll necessarily want to do when you first start Kharadron Overlords. I mean, you definitely won't want to paint 50 Arkanauts when you first start. That's for sure. I mean, I remember when I did my first 30, and that wasn't fun. But painting them all at the same time. But at some point, you might want to play some lists where you have some extra Arkanauts. I just realised there's a mistake in this. Ignore that. That should say 1. At some point, you will want to get an admiral because he's actually a pretty good hero. There's not really much else to say about that. I mean, I've listed the Aetherwar Navigator here and some more chemists, because if you play someone like Iron Sky Command, then you can basically take free heroes from a set list of options, and there's a lot of different configurations there. Plus, you can add in an admiral as well for a 4th hero. So with the options that I had before, you didn't have that many heroes. I had Fundrick's Profiteers to give you a chemist, and I had a navigator, because a navigator is just a really solid, useful hero to have, and it can do a cool thing where you can half the movement of an enemy flying unit. And I had the Endrinmaster with dirigible suit for making things fly, and the Endrinmaster on foot because it comes in the start collecting. But there is place for in list to have, say, 2 navigators. For instance, you might want to do that in Barrett 1R. And there's also place for having potentially up to 3 chemists in the same list, because a lot of the heroes got really good artifacts that you can get access to. So yeah, you end up well, I want to have this artifact, I want to have this artifact, I want to have this artifact, and then the time you do that, you're like, well, that's decided your heroes a little bit. So like the navigator has it has one for an automatic unbind or dispel, which is really good. The chemist, I mentioned spell in a bottle, but there's also emergency vent place, which once per game you can basically make all the units within 6 inches of him -1 to hit. There's an FAQ on that, whether how long it actually lasts for, but even if it's only for 1 phase, it's really good. And then Caustic and Atomizer, which is the last one, is also actually a really solid artifact power. So you could make a case for having 3 chemists in a list. And then even if you're not using all 3 of those, like if you go in Barrack Zilfin, then the chemist is actually a really good use for the generic Zilfin artifact power as well, because it's +1 to hit on a shooting weapon, and he has a shooting weapon that's 3d6 attacks at -2 rend, which is really good. So yeah, you want to get some extra heroes at some point as well. But yeah, that's it really. I think I covered everything. I don't want to make this video much longer than that. If you've got any questions, then leave a comment. If you like the video, then please hit like, and if you like what I'm doing with the channel, then please do subscribe. And thank you very much for watching. Cheers.